So Tyler isn't here, again, but that's okay because we have a special student-athlete co-host to fill in. You know, someone who can really talk about Lasalle sports. Hello, I'm Siobhan Nolan.
And I'm Puchol. Thanks for having me, Siobhan. I'm very excited. However, Tyler, this is my first time coming in here, but if you keep not showing up, it will certainly not be the last. You're watching Lasalle TV's home for Explore Athletics SportsLine.
Welcome to SportsLine. I'm running out of witty and creative ways to tell you this, but we're catching you up on all of your LaSalle sports heading into the Easter break.
And later, we talk a lot about him and the show, but this week we got to hear from star right-handed pitcher Frank Ellison to get a view of baseball season from the pitcher's mound.
But first, let's take a look at our SportsLine top 3.
Number 1. The LaSalle women's soccer team, at 5-2 overall, was rated 10th in the latest United Soccer Coaches regional rankings after its narrow 1-0 loss this past weekend to Fordham. The Explorers have been ranked all but 1 week during the spring 2021 season, including the first 2 weeks where they ranked 6th and 5th respectively.
Number 2. 3 members of the LaSalle University men's and women's track and field teams competed at the Rally Relays over the past 3 days. Juniors El Mancini and Ibrahim Kadir joined graduate student Grace Mancini at the 3-day meet. Elle started things off with the 10,000-meter race late Thursday night, where she ran a personal best 34 minutes, 30.92 seconds to place 11th out of 38. Then it was Kadir's turn in the men's 10,000 meters on Friday night, finishing 29 minutes, 55.26 seconds for 26th among 68 runners. Grace capped things off on Saturday by competing in the 3,000-meter steeplechase. She crossed the line in 10 minutes, 22.37 seconds to place 14th out of 32.
Number 3, men's and women's soccer and field hockey all held their senior days this past week, and were honored on the field from videos of their parents and other family members introducing them into the starting lineup. The seniors honored were Cassie Kincaid, Nina Magnotta, Jessica Hewitt, and Riley Allen for field hockey. Taylor Newhart, Ashley Pine, Casey Kilchrist, Amira Lukadis, Jana Soriano, and Mary Kate Winkler for women's soccer. And for men's soccer, Paul Renier Giralt and Mitch Foster.
Okay, so great pronunciation of your teammates' names. We struggle with that sometimes on SportsLine. But yeah, it's great to see the seniors honored. Rainy days, not the best conditions, but it was good. Track and field, as usual, they did pretty well at their meet. So yeah, we just have a lot of great stuff to talk about for top 3. There's a lot happening. We'll get into men's and women's soccer a little later, get into track and field later. But yeah, now we get into our little recaps.
That's it for the top 3. Now let's see how our teams did in this week's recap. Number 24 ranked water polo open conference play with a matchup with VMI. The teams traded goals to begin the game, each finding the back of the net twice. LaSalle then took an early advantage with another pair of scores, courtesy of seniors Sarah DeFusco and junior Madeline Copair. The Keydets tallied the final goal of the period, but LaSalle would still lead 5-4 after 1. After surrendering the lead in the second, the blue and gold scored 5 straight in 2 minutes to take a 10-6 lead. After the Keydets made it a 1-goal game shortly after, sophomores Cassie Malone and Shanna Swanick got the separation back in the third, giving the Explorers a 15-9 lead. Sophomore Sophie Aller would add the cherry on the top, giving LaSalle the 19-10 win for the first time over VMI in program history.
The men's baseball team faced off against St. Bonaventure in a doubleheader over the weekend. The Explorers were fortunate to get off to a hot start as sophomore Elijah Dickerson hit an RBI double, scoring 2 of his teammates, and then scoring on a pass ball to make it 3-0 in the first inning. The blue and gold added 2 more runs in the third when graduate student Ryan Guckins scored on an error, and senior Alphonse Sadala came in on an RBI single by redshirt sophomore Nick DeVitro. Senior Jack Cuccinata extended the Explorers' lead once again in the fourth when he scored on an error to make it a 6-0 game. The Bonnies attempted to come back with a solo home run in the fourth and 2 more runs in the seventh, but were held off by pitcher Colin Scanlon to end with a 6-3 victory. In the second game, freshman pitcher Frank Ellison kept up his hot streak by keeping the Bonnies scoreless for 5 innings. Offense showed out in the 5th inning by scoring 4 runs on 5 hits. The Bonnies got 1 run on 2 hits in the 6th in an attempt to challenge the deficit, but fell short and took their second loss to make it a 2-game sweep for the blue and gold.
The women's soccer team hosted Fordham for their senior day on Sunday, and the gloomy weather certainly matched the mood of the game. The Explorers had a chance to score in the 25th minute, with a free kick taken by sophomore Emily Banaszewski, but despite a spectacular shot to the right goal post, Fordham goalie Mara O'Sullivan was able to make the save. About 10 minutes later, the Rams were able to notch a goal, and Lasalle went into halftime down 1-0. The blue and gold fought hard for an equalizer in the second half, and nearly found it with an 88th minute link-up between senior Janice Soriano and freshman Kelly McGorty. But the comeback fell short, and the Explorers ended the day with a 1-0 loss.
Men's soccer also had their senior night against Fordham and faced an equally disheartening result. The first half saw quite the delay due to an injury sustained by a Fordham player, but the Rams weren't too shaken up as they were able to net a goal in the 27th minute of play. The two teams played for some even soccer for the remainder of the half, but the Explorers went into the break down 1-0. Fordham wasted no time once the second half kicked off, managing another goal in the 46th minute. Despite putting up an admirable fight, the Explorers couldn't find the back of the net, finishing the game down 2-0. Despite the disappointing result, Lasalle maintained their incredible shot record, outshooting Fordham 16-6, thanks to juniors Nigel Buckley and Ike Hollinger both recording 4 shots, while sophomore Frank Amizquer and freshman Scott Beeks both saw 2 shots on goal.
3 Explorers from the track and field team were standout stars after traveling to compete in the Raleigh relays. Junior El Mancini kicked things off by setting a personal best in the 10,000-meter race to finish 11th out of the 38 runners with a time of 34.5 minutes. Fellow junior Ibrahim Kidir also ran in the men's 10,000-meter race and finished 26th among 68 runners with a time of 29 minutes and 55 seconds. Graduate student Grace Mancini capped things off for the blue and gold after competing in the 3,000-meter steeplechase. She crossed the finish line with a time of 10 minutes 22 seconds and placed 14th out of 32 competitors.
The women's lacrosse team faced off against St. Joe's in the A-10 opener and were unfortunately unsuccessful after the Hawks exploded in the second half. The blue and gold held a solid lead after countering the Hawks' opening goal with 3 straight to gain an early advantage. The Explorers were able to hold the deficit at 2 for a majority of the half until the Hawks went off on a 3-goal spurt to close out the half. Being down by 1 coming into the second half, senior Emily Johnston netted for the Explorers to bring the game to a tie. Unfortunately, the Hawks scored another 3 straight to gain back the lead. Seniors Anina Labucci and Allison Hunter each found the back of the net to bring the deficit to 1 goal late in the second half, but couldn't find the lead as the Hawks sealed a win at the end with 18-11. The blue and gold then traveled to UMass but couldn't make up for their loss against the Hawks. The Minutewomen came out strong in the beginning of the game, scoring 6 straight in the first 4 minutes. The Explorers made an attempt to narrow the gap, but UMass eventually extended their lead 13-6. Several attempts were made to lessen the deficit, but the Minutewomen answered back every time. The game ended in a loss 17-10.
Delphi hockey team logged for the first victory of the year as they geared up to play UMass here in Philadelphia. UMass found the back of the net in the second quarter after a scoreless first quarter. That lead was short-lived as LaSalle would quickly answer with a goal of their own, tying the game at 1 piece. Later in the second, freshman Tatum Johnson would score her first goal of her collegiate career, giving LaSalle a 2-1 lead going to the half. The third was more like the first, having no action, but that was mainly because LaSalle's goalkeeper, who had 10 saves on the day, in the 46th minute of the fourth, things would go downhill for the Explorers. George McTeer of UMass would tie the game at 2 off a penalty corner. Both teams would battle forcing a draw at the end of the regulation. In extra time, McTeer would find the net one more time off another corner, giving UMass the lead and the win for the day, and keeping the Explorers still winless on the season.
Women's volleyball concluded their regular season with a matchup against Rhode Island this past Saturday. Early on, Lasalle had its fingerprints all over the ballgame, jumping out to a 7-3 lead and expanding it to 14-7. Rhode Island would fight back to make the first set competitive, but the Explorers were too strong and held off the comeback attempt, winning the first set. The second set, however, was different for Lasalle. Rhode Island was the team that got out to a big lead this time, taking a 6-1 lead. The closest Lasalle got to taking the lead in the second was closing the deficit to 3 scores, but Rhode Island was up to the task and held off the Explorers to tie the game, opening the third set. LaSalle was led 4-1 before conceding a run that gave their opponents the lead. LaSalle quickly answered but were outscored the rest of the set as Rhode Island took the third set. In the fourth, Rhode Island surged to a 13-5 lead, but the Explorers fought back, eventually tying the game at 17-all and continuing their hot play, scoring 4 of the next 5 points. However, a run from Rhode Island gave them the lead again, 23-22. Kills from Yaiza Franco and Sydney Stone would bring the game to a tie for LaSalle, but a 3-0 run from Rhode Island would be the end of LaSalle's regular season, as they ended their season on a loss.
Softball had a doubleheader matchup against City 6 rival Drexel, and the first of 2 did not fare well for the blue and gold. The Dragons put up the 5 spot in the top of their first, and 3 more in the second to make it 8-0 after 2. In the third, LaSalle tallied 2 runs as sophomore Maddie Little scored classmate Lauren Begg with an RBI single. Little would be brought in later of an RBI double from sophomore Casey Walker. Drexel would score 4 more in the fourth to conclude this one, early 12-2. In the second game, Drexel topped their first innings success in the first game with 6 runs to start the game. The Dragons would roll over the Explorers once again in this one. And the only run support for the blue and gold would be courtesy of sophomore Mia Resanello, bringing in senior Ashley Medenhall on an RBI double to right. This one also concluded after 5, with a final score of 9-1.
Men's golf traveled to Glenside to play a round at the Lulu Spring Invite on Saturday. Senior Ron Fishang finished the day tied for 11th with sophomore teammate Matthew Werner, while junior Parker Wine and sophomores Carson Rush and Nikita Romanoff carded a 78. Fellow sophomore Christian Fortis, who was competing as an individual, recorded the same score, leading the group to finish tied for 18th. Senior David Kim rounded out the day with a score of 84, and the team finished with a score of 308, placing 4th overall at the invite.
Men's tennis took on Villanova on Sunday and got a strong start on the Wildcats' home turf. Seniors Rogelio Gonzalez and Connor Merrill earned a 6-2 doubles win at the number 1 spot, while freshman Dylan Toll and sophomore Brandon Caban took the 6th straight victory at the number 3 spot. Junior Nassim Fengiro continued the Explorers' hot streak, picking up a singles win at the number 3 spot. Gonzalez notched another dub in straight sets, putting LaSalle in a favorable 3-0 position. But Villanova stormed back late to defeat the blue and gold, 4-3. The men continued their busy week against Monmouth on Tuesday, where they once again got a promising start. Senior Colin Lucius and Nassim Fengiro nabbed a doubles win at the number 2 spot, but Monmouth fought back to go up 1. The Hawks were then able to earn 3 straight set victories to clinch the competition 4-0.
So again, a lot to talk about this week. Naturally, I want to get started off talking about soccer. It was their senior nights. Both teams faced off against Fordham. So women's soccer, we don't see a lot of off days from them. They're doing very well in the season. So just as a soccer player, as someone who's familiar with playing the game there, what were your thoughts on the women's soccer game this week?
No, I thought they played a great game. It was a lot of grinding, a lot of fighting in the middle of the field. But yeah, it was unlucky, especially because it was the senior day, a tough loss. But again, it's part of the sport. You got to learn how to fight through it and bounce back in the next game.
Yeah, and men's soccer unfortunately faced a similar result against Fordham. I was at the game, I was there, and I have to say, Fordham might have taken the win, but I might be a little biased, we both are, but I do think that LaSalle was the better team, played better. The communication is something I really wanted to point out because I noticed that you, especially on the field, very vocal, a lot of communication in between the players. So as someone who was actually there playing in the game, can you just take us through what that whole night was like for you guys?
Well, it was very special because again, it was senior night for us as well, and we wanted to win. We wanted to get the result. We wanted to get the 3 points in order to advance in the A10 competition. But it was unlucky. It was two times that they got up there, 2 times they scored. We had many opportunities, didn't get the net, but it's part of it. Again, bounce back next week against Rhode Island and St. Joe's.
Yeah, and want to kind of round it out with baseball, who swept St. Bonaventure's, which is amazing. We want to highlight the pitching, obviously. Colin Scanlon, Frank Ellison, those 2 names we say a lot when it comes to pitching. You know, it's amazing to see the baseball offense get going. Their hitting has been really great lately. I don't know if you're very familiar with baseball, if you have anything to add about that.
I'm not going to talk much about this because I'm not a big fan. I have to get into it more.
That's okay. The LaSalle baseball team will definitely help you with that. They're doing very well this season. They're looking for a lot of wins in their upcoming schedule. They've got a very hectic schedule, but you know, Elijah Dickerson, Tatum Levins, Nick DeVitro, Ryan Guckin. I mean, it's the same names you talk about every week, but their offense is great. Their defense clearly has been heating up too. So I really think that we're in for a good baseball season still, and there's a lot of baseball left to be played for them. But that's it for recaps. But when we come back, Luis and I sat down with star pitcher Frank Ellison, who gave us a deeper look inside of his standout freshman season. Stay tuned.
It's the small things that make a big difference.
Welcome back. We got the chance to talk with baseball's man of the moment, the star freshman pitcher, Frank Ellison. Take a look.
Hello, and once again, welcome to this week's edition of On the Sideline. Today, we are joined by the freshman phenom for the baseball team here at LaSalle, Frank Ellison. Frank, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So, as Tyler mentioned, you're very much the star man on the baseball team this season. Just as a freshman, being so new to the team, what has it felt like to have such amazing success and have like such a standout season in your first season?
I'm just trying to make the team win. I'm just trying to make it to next season, trying for all the guys to come back. I'm just trying to get everyone ready, geared up for the next year because as of right now, we don't have one. So.
Right. So going more off of the success base, you coming out of Miami, you were a star in high school, 152nd ranked right-handed pitcher in the nation, and obviously had a lot of eyes on you coming here. And what do you think is the main reason for that success? Is it just kind of carrying over what you had going on in high school, or is it some of the coaching staff maybe helping out the pitching arsenal, helping out figuring out Division I batters? What do you attribute the success to?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely carried over, but also the help of the coaching and our team, all the teammates helping me out. I mean, it was also getting used to the environment because I've never obviously played in a D1 environment. And all the players kind of helped me get accustomed to it. And our pitching coach has helped me a lot. Coach Miller has helped me a lot. A lot of the starting pitchers, relievers have also helped me. and that's pretty much how it's been going.
And when I interviewed Tatum Levins a couple weeks ago, I asked him who he thought was one of the standout players on the team, and he mentioned you. So what has it been like pitching with a catcher like Tatum, who's very experienced, very much a leader, and who clearly sees a lot of potential in you as a pitcher?
Yeah, I love it when Tatum catches me. I mean, me and him are always on the same page. He knows what I'm thinking. I know what he's thinking. Very experienced. He's very vocal on the field. He's the best guy to have behind the plate when you're pitching.
And you mentioned earlier talking about just wanting to get your team wins. 10-7 on the season, 4-1 over the last 5. So you guys have been on a good streak.
Yeah.
And we always ask this when the pitchers come on. This Explorers team usually of years past and this year, of course, has been very offensive minded. You have a very explosive offense top to bottom. Talk about what that pitching with that behind you is, knowing that if you give up a crooked number in an inning, you know that your Explorers team can get it right back in the bottom half.
Yeah, we have a very spread out lineup. Like we have guys that can bunt the ball, guys that can hit for power, guys that have speed. So we don't really have that much to worry about on the offensive side. Like for example, against the series against Bucknell, I had a bad inning, and then the next inning they came right back out and swing, and they put a 4 spot against Bucknell. So that's an example that will happen throughout the season. I know my offense can back me up, so I'm pretty proud that I can say that.
Yeah, and as someone who's been a baseball fan my entire life, pitching always seemed like such a stressful position and a very lonely position on the field. It's just you out there in the middle of everything, but it never seems to faze you. You're always very calm and collected when you're on the mound. So how do you keep your cool when you're pitching in the inning, whether it's stressful or not for you?
So, I mean, pitching is very different from any other position in any sport. It's very specific mindset you have to have upon it. So I think the calmer you are, the better you'll do, because if you let things get in your head, it's just going to get worse from there. So if the other team's talking or saying stuff, you can't really think about it. You just have to have a tunnel vision on the catcher and you.
So as we record this now, it is last day of March, thankfully. You're from Miami native, so you obviously don't get nearly the same type of winters down there. So congrats on getting through your first winter, first off. But at the same time, what is it like pitching in that different type of element? Do you think that your stuff is going to get better as it starts to warm up, as it looks like we're in the clear of spring? And what was it like, the mental aspect of going out there trying to throw your best stuff when it's freezing out?
Yeah, it was kind of tough to get used to. So what I did was I came in the fall with one of our players, and then we just trained in the cold just to get used to the beginning of the season, because it was only going to get hotter from there.
Mm-hmm.
So we tried to train in the cold as much as we could with minimal clothing, just t-shirt and shorts and stuff.
Right.
So then from there, I also think my stuff is also going to get better, because the more the heat comes, the harder the velo gets. So I believe I'll get better from here.
Yeah, and going through your bio on Go Explorers, the numbers and stats, obviously everything's impressive, but something that stood out to me was apparently you're also known for your cooking skills. So I have to ask, what is your best dish that you make?
I mean, every morning back home I make steak and eggs for me and my brothers, so probably steak and eggs, because usually my parents aren't there in the morning, so I usually cook for me and my brothers. So that's why I guess they put that as the chef. I always cook for me and my brothers back home, and it's one of my favorite things to do outside of baseball.
Very well-rounded.
Yeah, no, I like it. There. So from serving steak and eggs to serving up a ton of strikeouts here, you've been one of the highest strikeout totals of a freshman, if not the highest strikeout totals per game for a freshman. What do you think kind of is the reasoning for that? Do you have just a breakout pitch that you always have confidence in? Is it kind of the mental battle for batter to batter, or is it the scouting report you get before the games? What do you think has been the key for those strikeout numbers?
Yeah, so I'm one of those pitchers that's big on scouting reports, so I'll watch a lot of film on the next team we play. It was hard for me against St. Bonaventure because they only played 3 games, but I still got something out of what I watched. So I watch that a lot. My pitching coach usually knows what to throw and what counts, so I trust him. If anything I feel like I don't need to throw, I'll just shake him off, and then we go from there. Usually me and my pitching coach and Tatum or Johnny DiMucci are always like together on the same page.
And just for my last question, what do you think you're going to have to do? What do you think you're going to have to keep in mind to keep up your confidence and keep up just the amazing streak performance that you've been on this season?
So what I always think of is forget the last thing you did. So like last game, I pitched very well. I can't like think about it because if I do, I just get overhyped or overconfident, and then that's when I just throw whatever down the middle and then they hit it. So that's how it always goes. So I try to forget about the good games, even though it's still in the back of my head.
Don't worry, if it's in the back of your head, it's in the fresh front of ours. So don't worry about that factor. But Franco, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to sit down and talk with us today.
Thank you.
And with that, we will send it back to the desk.
Well, that just about wraps it up for us this week. If you can't make it out to see the Explorer Report, be sure to tune in next week for our coverage. Keep up with this weekend's other sporting events by visiting goexplorers.com or check out this week's edition of The Collegian.
Also check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/LaSalleTV and on Twitter at SportsLineLTV. We welcome you to send us your thoughts and suggestions there. This week's poll is, who's the best Spanish player on the team? Me, Frank, Paul, Carlos, or Aymar?
Ooh, I think it's you, personally.
Thank you.
But,
I think so too.
Yeah. But for Isaiah and our entire SportsLine team, I'm Siobhan Nolan.
And I'm Luis Puchol. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you at the game.